Welcome back for another episode of the Babe That's Bonkers podcast. I'm your host, Kaylee. So happy to be here. So happy to have you here. Today we are chit-chatting about celebrating all things spring. Spring has very much sprung at this point. As I've mentioned, this episode was supposed to go out weeks ago. Life happens though, and now we are just in the thick of it. Spring technically started, or the equinox was, on March 20th, so we're almost a month into things, but it is interesting that the spring equinox, which is the pagan holiday of Ostara, is like exactly a month before Easter on 4/20 this year, so that's kind of fun. But I just personally found that a bit fascinating, with the difference between like pagan, commercial, regular, religious holidays and all that jazz. So we're going to be chit-chatting a little bit about that. We're also going to chat about some other spring-related things like gardening, cleaning, little creative projects, living with the seasons a bit more perhaps later as well. And it just feels so fitting that as I'm recording this, I don't know if you can hear, but they're just like birds singing their little songs outside, and I feel like that is really just like the sounds of spring. So to just dive right on into things, the spring equinox is one of the 2 days of the year where there is an equal amount of day and night occurring. With the solstices, there's either like the longest day or longest night of the year. The equinoxes are those like middle points, and I think it represents like the official start of spring perhaps. And with these springtime vibes, the holiday of Ostara very much represents, new beginnings, a season of fertility, kind of the awakenings of nature. Also a time of just, rejuvenation, rebirth, and new growth above all else. And that, my friends, can be very literal and also very metaphorical, because we can grow as human beings just as, the plants around us are growing as well. As always, there's a bunch more information on the Busy Pagan's little blog site. I'm just going to read a few little snippets that I thought were pretty interesting. Probably less than usual, I feel like, as I'm like learning about all these pagan holidays. Like, I don't know, it kind of all makes sense, and I see the patterns in the different ways to celebrate, but it is still interesting nonetheless, because there are a bunch of little like snippets and stories, lore, folktales, fairy tales. That's what I'm like super duper interested in. And that's always like switching up with every season, but they all seem to be very like reflective, live the way that like nature's behaving type thing. Let's celebrate by just like getting together as a community and eating good food kind of thing. So I did come across a little blurb that has to do with why we have like Easter bunnies and also eggs, because that doesn't really make sense, because Easter bunnies are like mammals, right? So they don't lay eggs, they are live birthing creatures, I guess you could say. So that always like confused me as a kid. I mean, fun, I'm not gonna knock it. There's this like magical bunny that comes and delivers me eggs filled with chocolate and candy and precious little like treats and stuff like that. I'm not gonna complain. Doesn't make any sense? Absolutely not. But it doesn't seem to be the point. However, the Busy Pagan reveals that this has to do with some Germanic folklore and the story of Ostara, the goddess of spring. Apparently, she turned a bird into a rabbit in order to survive the cold throughout this time. And in order to give thanks, the now rabbit still retained its like egg-laying capability and laid all of these different like colorful eggs and stuff to like give thanks and pay homage to the goddess, leave little gifts and stuff like that. So this little mythical, mystical, magical story is supposed to symbolize just like rebirth and renewal. This like bird is born again as a rabbit, and it's able to like live this new life and embraces it and it gives back in whatever ways it can, kind of thing. That's a very random but also interesting way to like represent growth and fresh starts. And honestly, now just the egg-laying rabbit makes sense. In some folklore story, a goddess turned a bird into a rabbit. So yeah, of course it would lay eggs, right? And not only is Ostara the goddess of spring, but she's also the deity that reigns over dawn as well, which I feel like is really fitting. I feel like dawn and spring both have, similar new beginning essences to them. Moving on to the next little tidbit, there are also some foods that are associated with this Ostara festival. Of course, eggs are no surprise at this point. They're a symbol of fertility. They're also a symbol of new life, which goes right along with all the different themes we've been discussing. And it's a bonus that they're super duper versatile because they can be hard boiled and eaten on their own, or they can also be used in a lot of different cooking and baking. I like that it includes hot cross buns. Personally, in my Portuguese heritage during Easter time, they would always make sweet bread. It's very similar to Hawaiian rolls. Those always remind me of it, but a little bit different. But they would do it special around Easter time with hard-boiled eggs in the middle. So sometimes they would make little rolls and make it in the shape of a basket and have hard-boiled eggs in there. And I thought that was always very fun. I have definitely debated doing that this year, but I've planned a few other things to make around Easter time. Still relating to my Portuguese heritage and whatnot, but just something a little different. We'll get to it when we get to it. Other foods that it recommends are, seasonal fruits and vegetables, of course. This might have something to do with sprouts, alfalfa sprouts, bean sprouts. I personally love sprouts, especially on avocado toast. My partner, however, thinks these weird little microgreens are rabbit food. So, if I'm by them, I have to know that I'm gonna be eating all of them. But, I might be inspired at the moment. This could also include, just other early spring greens. I've definitely been trying to buy more produce. I feel since spring has sprung, I have just been craving more fresh food. And so I bought it and I've been eating it and it has felt so good. I definitely feel a bit more energized. I also feel snacky more often, but I don't feel the way I do whenever I eat a bunch of garbage, potato chips and stuff like that. Seeds are another thing that it recommends, which I find also very fascinating. Someone in my life recently brought to my attention just seed cycling for women to go along with your different menstrual cycle weeks and stuff like that, and to help with hormonal balances and whatnot. And I haven't tested anything out yet or anything like that, but it did make me consider wanting to go out and buy some pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, other stuff. It also just makes for great salad toppings, and it's just a nice little crunch sometimes, a healthy snack. And I guess also for this time of Ostara, they represent, potential growth and abundance as well, just being a seed, that can become a plant someday kind of thing. It also mentions honey and dairy, two of my favorite food groups personally. Maybe it's because I grew up on a dairy and, we also had some almonds, some beekeeping eras in place. So honey was also very, very present on the family farm, and those things just remind me of home quite a bit. But, milk and honey sounds just absolutely delicious and are very versatile ingredients to, go along with those eggs if you're trying to do some baking, some breads of sorts perhaps. I know all three of those, milk, honey, and eggs, I don't know about together, but at least separately make really wonderful just washes for different rolls, which kind of give just a shine or, just some sort of coating to different breads and stuff like that. Again, not an expert, not speaking from experience, but just, different things I've read and watched people do on TV and the internet stuff. And last but not least, of course, it wouldn't be a feast if there weren't some meat. I really wanted that to rhyme. I have been thinking a lot about Dr. Seuss recently. I feel like Dr. Seuss played a huge role in my childhood. Fun fact, I was in Seussical the Musical whenever I was in elementary school. That was the first production I was really a part of, and my first experience in the theaters, and it was really, really cool. It's honestly such a wonderful show. I would love to see it on Broadway or something like that. That'd be super duper fun. But I've also just been doing some more creative writing recently, and the rhymes have been on the mind, and yeah, that automatically just makes me think of Dr. Seuss. And now I am tangenting. I was bringing up meat for the feast. The little blog talks about lamb, which I feel like does fit pretty well whenever it talked about like in bulk, kind of representing that like lambing season. So all the lambs were born, they've, had enough time to grow a bit and they're ready to, be harvested or whatever. Like hypothetically in history kind of thing. I also do love, lamb as a meat. It's a little bit gamier. My dad hunted, a bit whenever I was growing up, so I just tried a bunch of different foods and like the gamey taste doesn't bug me. And I feel like lamb is a really good like in between versus like super duper gamey like venison or something like that, compared to also just like, our regular, meat options and just like the modern day markets. But I think especially for a festival, I personally cook beef all the time. So, making lamb or something like that for a holiday, I feel like is a really easy switch up because you can kind of treat it pretty similarly, at least like ground beef, lamb, whatever, or like stew meat kind of thing. And last things pertaining to Ostara and the spring equinox, a few different activities, to throw out. Of course, there's, the classic like Easter egg decorating. I feel like this is also a really wonderful time to like go outside and pick some flowers, maybe go buy some flowers, put a little bouquet together. That's a really great way to refresh the home as well, which we will get into later. I would also definitely include, planting some seeds, which we'll also get into later, but what better time than the spring, of course. I like that the blog also talks about just like going for a sunrise walk. The springtime very much relates to dawn, as we kind of talked about earlier, so I feel like embracing just like that sunrise time and using that to like go outside first thing, get some fresh air. I personally like always benefit from that. I'm actually trying to do that a little bit more often. I had my birthday and that's what we did like first thing in the morning was we went outside and we went to go watch the sunrise, my partner and I together. And it just felt so great to just like breathe that like crisp, fresh air. And I feel like, there's just some beautiful natural thing that happens to us humans as we like watch the sunrise. Like I feel like we're just meant to do that. I think that's why the sunrise and sunset is so beautiful, because that's just like our wake up call and also our like nighttime call, bedtime call, whatever. But I just thought that was a super duper wholesome recommendation. Another one also being kind of like meditating on the idea of, or like journaling about the concept of balance. We just had the equinox where the night and day were like equal parts. They're opposites, but they also benefit really greatly from like finding balance in one another. So that could be a very interesting topic to dive into a little bit more. And the last one is a little craft that I thought was really fun, but just like making some candles at home that kind of have, some like spring scents to them. In my mind, that's just like a bunch of different like florals and stuff like that. I do have a friend who makes candles and, this has given me some ideas, potentially reach out, learn a thing or two. And I feel like a candle also plays in really well into the next little spring cleaning bit I want to dive into. I think I have maybe mentioned this before, but honestly, can't remember. And I personally need this little reminder. So we're going to chit chat about it now because it feels relevant. But I used to have this like home cleaning system that I would mentally call the home reset. I kind of learned about it from listening to the What We Said podcast. They heard about it from someone else. So there are just some like wonderful cleaning gurus in this world that are sharing their word, and it's, it got to me somehow playing the telephone game, and I've learned a thing or two. I like the system. When I'm actually like doing it, it works pretty well, but that's the secret, is you actually have to put the work in. So the home reset kind of has like two different parts in my head. One is like things that you can kind of do every single day that can help you immensely to keep a tidy home. One is putting things in their place, whatever items that might be. For me, that has to do with just like, putting the couch back together, making the bed, kind of like organizing the table, desk, coffee table areas, and just like, putting things away, things that just get used, left out, aren't in their home, give them a home. And if they don't have one, find one. That's kind of like the second part to that step. Other daily things include, just like minding the trash doesn't need to be taken out. Like living alone, I didn't really have to do that every day. Now that I have a partner, I definitely have to do that more often, or he does, because I'm blessed and I have someone to share these housekeeping burdens with. But just like trash, dishes, laundry are like the three things that I feel like should be like tended to in some way, shape, or form every single day. Today I feel like I kind of contributed to the trash by like emptying out any like ashtrays that were in the house and just like, garbage that's like lying around. I feel like doing like some step that contributes to laundry. Like you might not be doing like the entire load today, but like, we have some clothes that are clean but like need to be folded, so I'm folding them today, and then tomorrow I'm gonna like start a load. Hopefully I'll finish that, but we'll see how it goes. I actually think I have 2 loads of laundry to fold today, so that's why I'm just like not starting anything new, but just like making some sort of progress in the laundry department every day, I think is probably the hardest thing in the world. I have never done it. I'm not speaking from experience, but I think if I could get into that habit, it would help like the efficiency of our home so much, because we contribute to our laundry every single day. And that's kind of like the theme of this. Like the things you contribute to every single day, you should kind of like work on every single day. So that would also include like the dishes next. And we don't have a dishwasher, so we have to do everything by hand. And that can be kind of overwhelming to keep up with sometimes. But when we do have good dishwashing habits, it really doesn't take that long. Versus when we don't, it takes forever. And that's a lesson that life will continue to teach me until I learn it and will always remind me of whenever I forget. But to just like bundle it up mentally, it's put things in a place. If it doesn't have a home, find it a home. Mind your trash, your laundry, your dishes. No specific order for those things. But that's kind of like part 1 of the home reset in my brain. Or at least the like little mental daily checklist. Versus this next chunk is like, weekly chores, and that could either be one every day of the week. Whenever I lived alone, I like to just hit all of these in the same day. It would be, my first day off for the week. So I would have like my work week, my home reset / chore day, and then I would have like a free day where I like worked on whatever I felt like doing at that time, kind of thing. But in my mind, this is like a top to bottom clean is how I kind of refer to it in my brain. So it starts with like dusting the house. That's going to be like the fans, the walls, the blinds, all that kind of jazz, top to bottom. And then kind of wiping all of those surfaces, the windows, the mirrors, the walls, counters, tables, working down to like that mid-level. Also a great time to like assess any appliances in the kitchen or bathroom. And then finally we land at the floors, a good sweep, mop, vacuum type thing. But then the party goes outside, because we do have dogs, so the yard does need to be cleaned up, freed of feces every once in a while. And we also have just like a patio, so I like to sweep that as often as I remember. I really like to walk outside barefoot, but I hate it whenever it's covered in rocks. And again, we have dogs and they don't care about tracking rocks onto the patio, so giving that a little sweepy sweep is just really nice. And then I feel like it just leaves the space like set up for me to go outside, and I like to lay out a towel on my little yoga mat and just like sometimes do yoga, but also just do that to like hang out, paint, doodle, draw, cuddle with my dog if she's feeling it. But yeah, that's essentially just like my little home reset. I'm trying to get back into the habit of doing those things a bit more regularly and finding a groove now that I do have a partner, just figuring out like what the best division of labor is with our current circumstances kind of thing, which just is an ever-changing thing. So just something that we just have to continuously communicate about. But yeah, definitely want to lean into like the spring cleaning vibes. I really love having a tidy environment. I feel like it helps me think better, and I do find myself getting like depressed and just like overwhelmed whenever I have too many chores or things are just like too cluttered or too dirty or whatever like that. Like it just feels like everything's too much. So just like keeping things nice and tidy definitely helps my brain to think clearly. Clear space, clear mind. Something else I did want to throw out that kind of pertains to spring cleaning, but is more of just like an organizational thing. My partner and I have been doing a lot of chatting about purging our clothes. We have a very teeny tiny itty bitty closet that we share, so we definitely like have to swap out our clothes seasonally. Right now we have like a spring summer and a winter fall, and I kind of want to divide those into like quarterly bins so we have like even more rotation of our closets. I feel like that kind of like will give us less decisions to make, one, and two, kind of like a kid's toy rotation, just like keeps things like fresh and interesting. Like you've got 3 months to wear this shirt, you've got 3 months to wear the next one, kind of thing. So that's also on the to-do for the week, a little closet swap. And with that, a purge as well, just getting rid of things that like don't fit us well, in the new bodies that we're existing in as we're constantly growing and aging and all that jazz. If it's just not like our style anymore, if it's something that's old, like, I don't know. I'm very much in just like the mindset of kind of getting rid of most things that I have and just like replacing them with pieces that I just value a lot more and wear the fuck out of them, rather than having tons and tons and tons and tons of pieces of clothes and all that jazz that I wear like maybe once or twice a season. I just feel like it's wasteful, it's overwhelming, it takes up a lot of space in our teeny tiny home, and I'm just not about it anymore. It's not efficient or sustainable for the life that we are currently living. And I don't necessarily want to be a minimalist with like my home, because I love little knickknacks and trinkets that remind me of the adventures I go on in my life. But as far as like clothes go, I feel like I still have some work to do to like detach from all that. But of course, it would not be a springtime episode if we were not chatting about gardening. I think the last time we chatted was the fall. There really isn't much to do in the gardening department in the wintertime, unless you're exactly where I live, in Arizona or, close to California, then you can still do quite a bit with a winter garden. I did not do anything though, but Yuma is the lettuce capital of the world, so that is pretty cool. And the season is wintertime, which is fascinating. But a few things that are on our gardening to do is to just like transplant a few plants that have very obviously eaten through all of the nutrients that were in the soil that they've been living in for the past year or so. So definitely time for a bit of a refresh for them. It would also be the perfect time to like transplant seedlings into the flower beds, maybe like starting some seedlings kind of late now that it's already April for me out here in Arizona. Things are going to get really hot really fast. But, I think I might try it anyways. I do have some like flower seeds. I'm kind of just like leaning into like a more low-key side of gardening. I very much want to have a homestead someday, and I grew up on a farm, so I feel like I should grow all of my own food. Like I went to school to study it, so like why am I not doing it kind of thing. But that's kind of like expensive to start up, and then it's like later on you kind of can like reap the benefits of like those investments kind of thing. And I'm just not in the like right location at my rental house to like live that lifestyle, so I'm just like press and pause on that. I know that I can live it all, I can have it all, just not at the same time. So I do want to get into gardening more though. So what I'm thinking is just leaning in more to like the floral side of things. I do love flowers so much. They bring me so much joy, and I know that relates to a lot of other people, and they're also great attractors for pollinators. And my neighbor does have some vegetables and stuff, so I feel like that's a good like community investment. I think it would also just be so fun to be able to like go out into my garden and like cut some flowers and put it in a vase for myself. I feel like that would just be just as fulfilling as like growing my own tomatoes to make my own pasta sauce. But maybe even more, because after I like have flowers in a vase, I always try to give them a second life. Sometimes I'll like gift some to people if like a lot of them are dying, and there are a few like good ones. I'll like save those if I know I'm gonna like run into someone who I think would appreciate that. Or with roses specifically, before they start to like die and get crunchy, is I'll try to like harvest some of the petals and like throw it in a bath. I also just love to like press my flowers whenever I remember, before they get too gross and stuff. I'm a memorabilia collector, very much so. I love to document things. That's something that's also been on my mind quite a bit recently, is just like my love for remembering. I think to like get a little deep, my family just has like a history of whenever you get older, you don't necessarily have the best memories. So I think that's why I just really gravitate towards things like having a podcast so I can, have a little bit of a memoir, being a photographer and taking pictures of really beautiful moments and things that I witness in my life. Taking videos, wanting to have like vlogs of adventures, collecting rocks and flowers and things that just remind me of all the beautiful and happy, brilliantly wonderful, magical things that happen in my life. But now that that tangent's out of the way, I've been thinking about planting some flowers in the garden, starting from seed. I think some sunflowers since I'm kind of late to the game this season. And I also think that they'll just be able to like withstand like the heat we're about to experience. Another activity I really want to do this spring that doesn't really relate to gardening but definitely relates to flowers is doing a little photo shoot during the super bloom. The flowers started blowing at the end of February here, and I definitely hope that I don't miss it. But monsoon season, we just had our first sprinkles of rain yesterday, so monsoon season is very, very soon, and that's when everything really seems to like pop off a little bit. Maybe I just need to like travel, go outside a little bit more, but I really want to do like a super bloom photo shoot either by myself or with a gal pal. I don't know. I'm trying to get back into the mentality that I used to have whenever I was single, and it's just like hard to like get together with friends sometimes, of just like, I'm cool because I do all the things that I think are cool. I'm going to make plans to do the things that I think are cool so that I can enjoy my life, and I'm going to invite the people that I enjoy spending time with to tag along with me. But no matter what they say or what they're doing or how they react or whatever's going on in their lives, I'm not going to let that like stop me from living a life that I think is super beautiful and magical and fulfilling. A life that sparkles, as Amy McNee would say. And this definitely doesn't come from like a place of disrespect by any means. And, if anyone in my life like needed me, I would change my plans to be there for them. But, I'm also not going to let, being alone or being the only person available or like interested in doing an activity stop me from doing it. Like, that's something that I have a habit of doing. I feel so much safer with a buddy. Everything's better with a buddy, right? And that can be true at times, but there's also so much power in enjoying your life with yourself. And I'm just trying to get back in touch with that energy. So we'll see how this next little photo shoot goes, but 'tis the plan. I should add that to my calendar now that I say that, but it's gonna happen. We'll see. And that's pretty much all I have for today's little spring chit chatter. I'm also going to be skipping the astrology thoughts for today because next week's episode is going to be another astrology 101, and I am just going to yap your ear off. So we'll save all of that fun witchy woo-woo stuff for next week. So I guess that takes us right on into today's life updates. First up is that I have made a Substack. If you would prefer to like read the podcast or want to recommend it to someone who might be like auditorily impaired, I hope is the correct way to phrase that, but just, if someone would benefit from reading it rather than listening to it, I want the podcast to be available to any humans that are interested in it. So I now have a written version available on Substack. There are also like transcripts on Apple Podcasts. I will say both of these are like auto-generated, so there's definitely going to be some typos, some like misspoken words. If you happen to notice them, feel free to point it out, but I'm sure you can figure things out with context clues, I hope. If not, a little challenge for you. Substacks seem to be popping up all over the internet these days, and I am very, very excited. Someone mentioned that it seems to be like the cure for TikTok and stuff, just like TikTok shorts, reels, it's all this like short form content that kind of like messes with our attention spans and like dopamine receptors and stuff like that because of the like instantaneous gratification or just like desire to keep searching for like the next dopamine hit kind of thing, versus like Substack being long form, more blog like content that has delayed gratification because you have to like read it to consume the content kind of thing, seems to be really benefiting a lot of people that struggle with the way that they use their phones. So I think it's really cool. It's definitely a community that I want to be more engaged in. It's the kind of content I like, honestly, even though I put out, you know, shorts and reels and TikToks every once in a while to try to like promote the podcast and other stuff, and also just like have fun every once in a while. Like that's, you know, the point. I forget, you know, it's not just all like marketing, advertising strategies. It's also just for like fun and connecting with people. But as far as like consumption wise, I kind of try to stay away from TikTok. I just, you know, it doesn't feel great for my brain, and I feel better now that I've taken like some space from it. No shame to anyone who enjoys, you know, a good little scroll sesh, but it's about everything in moderation, right, guys? And, you know, that just being like how I personally feel, I'm really excited to just be more involved with Substack. I do also just have other content I'm going to be putting out on Substack as well. I do think eventually this is just going to be like my best hub for all the different like fun projects I'm working on, whether that be like my podcast or photography or art stuff. I think this is just like it's just a space that I want to, you know, put a lot of effort into. And, you know, I've also been getting into like creative writing, as I've mentioned in the past like few episodes. So I think this will be another really great outlet to like share some of those things, whether that be just like personal essays, little journal entries that, you know, I feel might, you know, resonate with people and be helpful or, you know, cathartic for me to share, or, you know, might be some like little fictional stories, you know. Well, I don't know how I plan to use Substack per se, but I think it's going to be really fun to just like play around with the space and just like see what it like naturally grows into kind of thing. You know, that's happening with the podcast. It's just how the cookie crumbles, you know? But I do have my Substack linked below, so go ahead and check that out in the show notes. I would love if you would, you know, stop on by, show some love. It's totally free for now. I don't have paid anything out for anything. Those things will be for another season of life, perhaps. But right now, everything is free. I just want to share my mind with y'all. Another life update is that I did indeed get some tattoos. It went really well. I am very, 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 very happy with all of them. They're exactly what I was looking to get. They're all ideas that I've been like sitting on for a few years now, and I also feel very just like apprehensive, scared, like I don't know. I grew up in a pretty traditional family, and no one in like my immediate family has tattoos that I'm aware of. You know, once we get into like the cousins and stuff, that changes and whatnot. All to say is that it feels very taboo for me to do, but I have always just had this like sense about myself since I was a young girl that I would eventually have them, and especially just like, you know, finding myself in my 20s, you know, embarking on this journey to be an artist. It has just made me fall in love with tattoos even more, especially just like the different designs, the different styles that artists, you know, put out and all that jazz. And there's this one artist that I've just like followed for a few years now, so I was just like pretty confident that like I liked the things that she put out and the things that she comes up with, and it was just a really wonderful experience overall. But yeah, again, it just feels very taboo for me to like have done and to also like be sharing about on the internet. Like that feels fucking wild. But it's also, for me, it's kind of the point. Like it's a reminder for me that this is my life, and people might have thoughts about it and they might not agree with every decision that I make, but it's not their life. At the end of the day, it's my life, and I have now, you know, provided myself with just some like really beautiful, meaningful reminders and pieces of art that I'm going to carry with me throughout my lifetime. And I feel like there is so much beauty in all of it, and those are the thoughts that I'm really trying to feed into, like the positive ones, because at the end of the day, like I did it. They're on my body. I permanently have tattoos now for forever and ever. And I do have other ideas. So I do see myself getting more in the future. It's just, you know, it's a newer thing, and just the whole process in general, though it has been like exhilarating and exciting, it's also been kind of nerve-wracking and anxious at the same time. But you know, it's just, I think it's all just a part of everything. But you know, it's just, that's just how the experience is. So I don't know, maybe one of these days I'll do a little tattoo tour, you know, once they've like fully healed and all that stuff. And you know, maybe I'll feel like sharing all the stories that are behind each of them. But for today, I'm gonna leave things a bit of a mystery, because I didn't get them for you. I got them for me, and I'm just gonna hold on to that and honor that for a little bit longer, until I feel like sharing more. But yeah, that's just a huge update in my life. It's just, it's been a long time coming. It just felt so right. And yeah, it was a really exciting, wonderful, nerve-wracking experience. And it very much reminded me that I am in control of my life, and I can decide to do whatever the fuck I want to do. And there is just so much magic and beauty in it. And yeah, I'm a happy gal. And I'll also say that they really did not hurt as much as I thought they would. Like, not at all. I feel like cat scratches is very much a good way to describe it. But like waxing, like even just like my legs or something like that hurt way more. Like if you've ever waxed your armpits, way more painful than getting a tattoo. I'll say that. So if you're contemplating getting a tattoo and you're just like afraid that it's gonna hurt, like it'll be fine. Just trust in yourself. Practice breathing. Breathing is key. In and out. Staying calm. All that jazz. But I think that also made it kind of like a meditative experience. Just like, you know, breathing through it. And yeah, I'm happy with it. And I'm gonna move on now. I think the last little update that I'm gonna have for today is just we've been spending more time with family. We're actually gonna go do another little like hike or something with Mr. Onyx, who's napping over there on the floor. But we're gonna go out and do a little sunset hike tonight with the doggo and the family that's in town. It's been just so wonderful to connect with people that we love. I feel like, I don't know, since winter kind of ended and we like got past the holidays, like I have slowly noticed just like the town, the people, the community, you know, waking up and becoming a little bit more antsy. And I feel like that ties in so well to just like the springtime vibes. And it has just been super lovely to just be becoming a little bit more social, like one step at a time, as we're like exiting our hibernative states that we've been existing in, you know, just being home buddies. But I'm a home buddy at the end of the day, so it is important to me to recharge and have balance and all that stuff. But I have really appreciated recently just like the opportunity to get out of the house and spend some time outside and get some fresh air. And we did it for a family member's like CrossFit meet, and that was really inspiring. Definitely like took me back to like my swim meet days where they have like all the different heats and events and stuff like that, and all the workouts that we would do for Hell Week and water polo very much reminded me of the CrossFit stuff, because it just is like weight training and body weight and cardio all mixed together, and it seems like really horribly exhausting, but everyone's also so strong, you know. And my partner and I were just chatting, and we're both very inspired to like work out more. And we are fairly like active people, but you know, we have other goals. And since going to the CrossFit meet, you know, we're ready to like amp things up a bit, like get to the next level of our workout journeys that we're on at the moment. I feel like that's also something that very much has mimicked just like the flow of the seasons. Like in the wintertime, I haven't really paid attention to working out very much. Maybe some stretches here and there, you know, to not not be too stagnant, but overall I haven't really been like on the fitness grind, but I have just been catching myself being more active and doing more yoga and just like throwing in some like spontaneous workouts every once in a while here and there. My partner and I have gone to the gym a few times. So we're good for a while, not so much these days, but life happens, ebbs and flows, and we are now inspired and motivated again. So probably going to utilize that gym membership a bit more. But I feel like that just like perfectly mimics spring. Like we're just on the slow roll gaining momentum to just like carry it out throughout summer. Like if we're going to be talking about like living seasonally, right? You know, we have winter, which is a period of rest. We have spring now, which is like a period of new beginnings, of slow, steady starts, kind of like setting yourself up for success, which is also something I have been wanting to do an episode on specifically. So we'll actually see, a toss-up between, setting ourselves up for success or a deep dive into some astrological moon phases. Those will probably be, the rest of our episodes for April. The order is a mystery to both you and I for the time being. But all to say that spring is that kind of like warm-up session, we're getting things started, and I feel like summer is where we really go ham, and we're just like in the groove, grinding kind of thing, which makes me think that this is just like a perfect reminder that for the spring, it's all about just like slowly developing our good habits to again set us up for success for like the summertime though. But yeah, we've got like summer grind time where we're just, living life to the fullest, and I feel like it's easier to do because the days are longer. The sun is giving us more and more energy, and the flip side, in wintertime there's just less sunshine, the days aren't as long, we're not supposed to do as much. Like nature is literally telling us to take a beat. And then of course, after summer comes fall, and that's the time to kind of start like wrapping things up, preparing for that season of rest kind of thing. Again, just like setting yourself up for success in different ways. I feel like that's what really makes like spring and fall these like transitional periods. I also feel like they're a bit shorter of seasons, but yeah. I do think I mentioned in our little like fall episode that I just really crave living seasonally. I talk about seasons of life constantly, and I don't think that they're the same by any means. I do feel like living seasonally really relates to just like responding to the happenings of Mother Nature and just like reading its cues and following suit kind of thing, versus like seasons of life is more so like you're in different eras. Some seasons of life you're a bit depressed, some seasons of life you're gonna feel like you're on top of the world, some seasons you're struggling financially, some seasons you're living comfortably. That's kind of more so what I mean. But so like seasons of life can be a couple months long or a couple years long or anything like that, but like seasons pertaining to like the year are only like a few weeks, months long kind of thing. And now I think I'm just getting confusing. But all to say that I do just believe in living seasonally in more ways than one. And I do think that just like being a woman with like a menstrual cycle that very much also mimics the 4 different seasons, makes me, even more drawn to the concepts. I just feel like there is so much I have to learn. And now that makes me think of just another episode idea where we talk about just like womanhood and cycle tracking and all those kinds of things that I wish they just would have taught us in health class in school, but we're just winging and figuring out on our own. But anywho, that's enough ranting and rambling from me for now. So we're going to go ahead and wrap things up with the tarot reading of the day. We have our Heart and Hands tarot deck. It absolutely feels like the perfect deck to be using today. I was just talking to the friend who gave this to me earlier, trying to make some plans to get together. Whoop. I feel like this is the card. We don't need to do all sorts of shuffling. We've got the High Priestess today. Super duper beautiful card. It definitely reminds me with like the prayer hands and the beads of just like your kind of like classic like saint posture with the rosary. There's also just like the veils, so many flowers. Let's get into it. A little ASMR for you. The High Priestess, which is the third card in the Major Arcana's story. A priestess stands in a Ionic Mandalora, a crescent moon at her feet. Her hands are clasped reverently, wrapped around a string of prayer beads. While her flowing hair obscures her eyes, a third eye opens above them, showing that her insights rise from inner vision. Her garments swirl in circles that dissolve into the flowers around her as her meditation connects her to the cycles of nature. This card suggests that feminine wisdom is present. Insights arise from intuition, emotional intelligence, and a respect for the rhythms of nature and of one's own body. The High Priestess perceives that which is invisible to others and can provide transformative shifts in perspective. She may not always be able to explain how she knows what she knows, but her guidance is trustworthy. Holy shit, guys. I feel like I've got chills. Oh my goodness. I was literally just talking about the cycles of nature and how that relates to like femininity and womanhood, and I'm mind boggled. Also, yeah, just like the reverence. I feel like it made me feel good to like be able to perceive that, I guess. But wow, what a beautiful reading to go along with today's episode. I hope some of that resonated with you. You know, we can all be high priestesses in our own ways. A lot of the times when these major arcana cards pop up, it's supposed to, you know, kind of reflect us as humans or other people that might be in our life. You know, not always. It could still relate to just more like concepts and ideologies, but I have just heard that these cards kind of represent people more specifically than the minor arcana, so something to think about. I know, you know, I wouldn't mind trying to embody the High Priestess in my life or something like that. But yeah, thank you for sharing that little tarot pool with me. So beautiful, so fitting. I love it. But yeah, please join again for next week's episode. We're either just gonna be having a fun, rambly evening, chatting about how to like set ourselves up for success in this life, or we're gonna be having some witchy woo-woo chats, you know, being some astro babes and whatever. Either way, it will be a lovely time, and I'd love to have you there. If you happen to enjoy today's episode, it would be so helpful if you like shared that on your story or something like that, left a comment, left a rating or review, you know, entirely up to you. Here we are again with the rhymes, and we'll be back with some more next week. So once again, thank you for your support. It absolutely means the world to me that you're here listening to all of my yammering. But until next time, bye babes.